The fuse had already been lit toward the revolution. Gasoline essentially had been poured on it with some of the different acts by the crown. Things were getting closer. And into this, we're going to look at what's called the committees of correspondence. Now, they're referred to as seditious. Now, by definition, sedition is an incitement of people to rebel against an authority or a monarch. So, in other words, this ties back with John Locke and the concept on natural law, saying that people have a right to rebel against a tyrannical ruler, which is what the Patriot cause looked at George III as being. Now, King George III was 32 years old at this time. From everything that I have read thus far, seems to not have been really a bad person per se, but he was not a good ruler. He was not the type of ruler that could look at what was going on around him and could make good decisions based on circumstance. He did tend to have a little bit of the theory that he was in the right, he was the king, that all he really wanted was the good for his people, and that the subjects should obey him. But like I said, he didn't always make good decisions. Now, he did have a tendency to surround himself with sycophants, with people who would suck up to him, that would tell him what he wanted to hear, which is never a good idea if you are a politician to only hear what you want to hear. Now, some of the people that surrounded him were individuals like Lord North here. Now, Lord North, historians have gone back and forth on him. In some respects, they argue that he was essentially the one that lost the colonies for Britain. Others think that he was a good politician, just in a bad situation. So again, this is one of those things that I leave it up to you to do your own research and make your own decision on this. Now, if you recall, Champagne Charlie had the Townshend Acts put in place, and there were a variety of taxes that they were trying to raise money from the colonies through. However, these taxes really didn't do much. And eventually they were repealed, except for the tax on tea. Now, again, this was not a gigantic, huge amount of money as far as taxes go. But again, it fell back to that principle. It went back to that concept of no taxation without representation. And so long as the colonies did not have any kind of representation in Parliament, they argued they were not going to pay any kind of tax. So again, we're seeing an acceleration. We are seeing the fuse burning faster and faster as we approach revolution. And when seditious committees of correspondence, we're talking about people like this guy right here. That's Sam Adams. Now, the colonies wanted to keep in touch with one another. They wanted to keep spreading propaganda, keep the rebellious mood set up. They knew that people were upset and that they would be able to use this for political ends. And so they set up what were referred to as committees of correspondence. These were basically letter writers. It says that they were a forerunner of the Continental Congress, which is true, but you can think of it in terms today of this being really the forerunner to social media. This was an attempt by people to write letters to as many people as they could in various areas around the colonies to keep word of what was happening going, to keep the passions inflamed so that change would come. Think about it in terms of they were just trying to get as many views as possible for what they wanted to say. First of these committees was started by Samuel Adams here, okay, and they kept that revolutionary spirit rolling. So they worked very, very hard at making sure as many people as possible found out what they really wanted. Now, you got to think about it that there were those within the colonies that were really desperate for some form of revolution to throw off the control of Great Britain. But at the same time, there were also those in the colonies that wanted to remain loyal to Great Britain no matter what. These were the Tories. And there were also those who were just sort of waiting to see what would happen next. So you're really seeing two very, very different camps starting to form within the colonies themselves, not just starting to see differences between the colonies and Britain, but really the starting of what could be referred to as a civil war within the colonies themselves. It was a time in which choices were going to be made, families would be split apart, friendships would be dissolved, and there would be great change coming.